Today on Israel Hayom Insider, college campuses often provide safe spaces, places where students can speak and act freely without being subject to intolerance, discrimination, or harassment based on their ethnic, religious, or sexual identities. Protecting students from hate speech may seem like a worthy goal, but the policy has been criticized as coddling students, chilling free speech, and protecting some ideas at the expense of others. With me in the studio, Camera's International Campus Director, Aviva Slomich.
Hi, Steve. How are
Hi,
you?
Aviva. So, Aviva, how do safe spaces relate to your world of Zionist activism on campus?
So, first of all, the idea of safe space, it sounds great. It makes sense that students should have a place in the university where they feel comfortable as if they're at home. And this is honestly something that the universities have been providing for years. It's not really a new idea. But at CAMERA, which is it stands for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America, it's a premier media monitoring organization. We've also been working on campuses since the 90s. And what we've seen, honestly, since the 90s, but it's changed over the years, that Jews, Israel supporters, and even attacks of or examples of anti-Semitism isn't as protected on university level as other egregious examples of racism or discrimination.
Wait, so do you oppose safe spaces just because we're not protected but other people are, or do you oppose them, like, in theory, for everyone?
What safe space has become, this idea, as I mentioned before, the idea that students have a place that they feel comfortable in general, that they just, it's in terms of walking around the campus, free from any type of sexual assaults or something, something very on a serious level, that they can voice their opinion in the classroom and then they're not afraid of their grades being graded down by professors who don't agree with them because of their opinions, and so on. That makes sense. But what safe space has become is basically censorship and it's taking away the whole idea of being at a university and having a free range to experience different ideas and hear from different people. It's taking that away from the students.
Okay, can you give me any examples of how Zionist or pro-Israel activism has been, censored because of this whole safe space idea? I mean,
first of all, it's something important to note that this isn't just happening in the U.S. or in Canada. It's happening in the rest of the Western world as well. One perfect example is what just happened in England during a camera event with Chen Mazig at the University of College London. Originally, the students, had the event planned and it was going well. Chen, he is he's a former soldier in Kolgat. He's also Mizrahi. He's also openly gay Israeli. So he has all kinds of different minority point of views to speak about on campus. He spoke in England a couple of years ago in 2014 and was protested by the Palestinian students because he's Israeli.
Yeah.
Because of these protests, the university deemed him too controversial to come on campus, which is protecting the students who, in the first place, are censoring him to allow an Israeli to come on campus.
The university didn't want to hear from him because his view might offend other people.
Exactly.
Okay. And what happened in the end? Was he able to speak?
In the end, where he was able to speak to a certain degree, because in the end, the university said, okay, the event can go on. But then what happened? There were so many protesters, over hundreds of protesters surrounding the Jewish students in the room, screaming, banging, even jumping through the windows of the room, that it made it very difficult for Chen to speak. The students were extremely uncomfortable.
So he didn't exactly have a safe space to express
himself. He did not in any way have a safe space. He was able to give some form of a presentation, which is very important to encourage him to do so, and for the students. And then he had to flee the scene. Literally had to be clothed in a police jacket and go out the back door, escorted out so that the students wouldn't know it was him. And then once they reached outside the university limits, the police looked at him and said, okay, now we're safe, and we're no longer in the university.
Okay. Would there ever be any examples of pro-Israel groups using this concept in order to stifle, opinions that we are not in favor of? for example, BDS or something like, things like that. Do Jewish students say, this makes me uncomfortable, BDS, or pro-Palestinian opinions or anti-Israel opinions, so you have to ban this speaker or create a safe space where I'm not going to hear things that challenge my view?
Right.
Do we do that?
First of all, I can't speak 100% for every single pro-Israel student, but I can speak for the students that I work with, and I can speak for the students that have been published in articles and have written to camera for support. And there's never been a case where we've tried to censure any type of form of freedom of speech. One perfect example was that there was a class that was being scheduled, and is scheduled right now at UC Berkeley, that was being taught by students, where students could get credit, taught by students who have a bias against Israel, part of the SJP on campus.
Students for Justice in Palestine.
Students for Justice in Palestine, that were describing, it was all about the Arab-Israeli conflict from a very biased point of view on the Palestinian side, describing Israel as an Israeli settler colonialist project, recommending specific type of books and authors who have a bias. So what happened? The students, and then eventually also outside organizations, got involved to expose this to the university, not to cancel the class, which is very important. It was not to cancel the class. It was to look into the class and see if there was a way to add another point of view, so that the students aren't only being getting exposed to one point of view on the conflict. It's also important to include that Hatem Bazian was the faculty advisor, who was a tenured professor at UC Berkeley, and who is the same man who founded Students for Justice in Palestine. And when he was at San Francisco State as a student, he was chanting for another intifada, not a third intifada, I'm sorry, but another intifada in the States. So this is the same person who, it's just important to note the context of who's involved in this class.
Okay, this safe space concept, it doesn't just stand alone, right? It goes along with other kind of political correctness, like trigger warnings, microaggressions, banning speakers, like you said, like chen, what's that called, like no platform or something, right? And intersectionality, right? These are all kind of tools that are being used to shut down free speech on campus. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I'm seeing it as tools being used to shut down free speech, and I'm definitely seeing it as tools to shut down any inclusivity of Zionist or Jewish students on campus. One example of it, in terms of the intersectionality, we see a lot of rallies and protests now, and also a few years back, last year and 2 years ago, support of minorities on campus, against any type of racism or discrimination. Also, one great example was last year, the Million Student March, which was against high tuition fees. But what happened with that? Many of the students were interested and involved, the Jewish students, the pro-Israel, I'm sure the pro-Palestinian, everyone, because it wasn't about really politics, about tuition fees. But very soon, when it became close to the rally at UMass Amherst, for one example, all of a sudden you started seeing flyers about free Palestine and discrimination against Israel, and the march included these types of chants of free Palestine.
In a march against tuition hikes.
Exactly. So you have these students who were, getting involved for one ideology and one thing that they support, and all of a sudden in the middle of it there's something against Israel, and they're not paying attention, and they don't even know exactly what this is. And to the extreme level was in New York. At the same time, November 2015, they were screaming, "Get the Zionists out of CUNY," which is a city university of New York. Get the Zionists out of CUNY, blaming the Zionists for the high tuition costs.
Wow. Aviva Slomich, thank you very much. Sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. I want to thank the viewers for joining us again. Subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get all the latest news on Israel every day. Continue to watch us and to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll see you next time.